This is Geometry, Unit 9. We'll be classifying quadrilaterals. This is a review worksheet. We're given 3 points, and we're trying to find the 4th point that is going to make this a parallelogram. There are a few points that would be possible. There'd be a point down here. There could be a point up here. And then your most common point is going to be in this area. We're going to look at our slope. We'll label this as point A, point B, point C, and we're looking for point D. Slope AB is rise 4, run -3. So if that's the slope there, I'm going to go from point C and do that same thing. Because that made my opposite sides parallel to each other. Now I know that point CD is also -4/3. So that makes them the same. Makes AB parallel to CD. Now I can look from C to B up 6/4, which can be reduced to 3/2, and then D to A the same thing. Notice that these slopes are not opposite reciprocals. They are actually opposites, but they're not reciprocals of each other. So the lines are not perpendicular. So CB is parallel to DA. So now what we're looking at is we have 2 sets of opposite sides parallel. So that gives us a parallelogram. Our point was at -5, -1. Next, we're looking for a rectangle. But with a rectangle, I need to know that consecutive sides have to have opposite reciprocal slopes. So I need to look for the slopes. So point A, point B, point C, and I'm looking for point D. Well, I can count from B down to A, and then that would give me C down to D. Down 3, 4. From B to A, it's -3, -4, which is a 3/4 slope. Notice that it's actually increasing to the right, so 2 negatives show that that's actually a positive slope. We'll do the same thing from here. So we have our point D at 3, -5. So AB or BA has a slope of 3/4. DC has a slope of 3/4. They're the same, so BA is parallel to DC. Then we'll compare the other sides. AD. So we're down 8/6. So that can be reduced to -4/3. So we should have the same thing now with B to C. These are the same. So we know that AD is parallel to BC. That makes a parallelogram. Now we're going to look at the slopes to each other. So notice that this slope is positive 3/4. This slope is -4/3. Those are opposite reciprocals. That gives us a rectangle. Now we'll talk about a square. We're looking for the fourth point that's going to make this a square. There would only be one spot that could possibly make this a square. Just like with a rectangle, there was only one spot that was going to make that a rectangle. But the parallelogram actually had multiple spots that were a possibility. Point A, B, C, we're looking for D. Notice that from B to A, up 4, -2. So from point C, I'm going to do the same slope. Same slope makes them parallel. From AD, we're going up 2/4. So now we have two sets of parallel sides again. That makes a parallelogram. We have opposite reciprocal slopes. Which makes a rectangle. So now what I need to look at is the consecutive sides. So let's look at side AB. And look at their length. From A to B, we do x1 minus x2. And y2 minus y1. Negative 2 plus 4 that's being squared. Two squared is 4. Negative 4 squared is 16. So that's the square root of 20. Now we're going to compare that with a consecutive side, with a side that's perpendicular to that. We already know, because this is a parallelogram, that opposite sides are congruent. So no need to find DC. I know that that's the same. I need to figure out if the consecutive side is the same. D to A. Point D was 0, 2. So my x's are negative 4 minus 0 squared and 0 minus 2 squared. Negative 4 squared and negative 2 squared. (16 plus 4), that's the square root of 20. So that makes consecutive sides congruent, which makes all the sides congruent. 4 congruent sides makes a rhombus, which now is a square. So here I'll say 4 congruent sides. And my final answer here is a square. We have 4 right angles and 4 congruent sides. On the next page, we're looking for a trapezoid. Actually have two choices. We can make a side that's parallel to this one. That'd be a point over here. Or you can make a side parallel to this one. That would be over here. Your choice, doesn't matter. I saw many people making it on this side, so I'll try to do the same that we did in class. So 5, negative 6 was point A, point B, point C. Now we're looking for point D. Slope AB is up 1 over 4. So my slope CD has to have that same slope. But when I do that, up 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4, I need to go farther than that, because that's a parallelogram. These opposite sides are parallel. I need them to be something different. So I'm going to do that slope again, up 1 over 4. So I really have up 2 over 8, which is reduced to 1/4. So these are the same. So I know that AB is parallel to CD. That's 6, -3. Now I could compare CB and I could compare AD These are not the same. Not parallel. So therefore I have a trapezoid. I needed to show that this was a trapezoid. So I showed one pair of parallel sides. Looking for a rhombus. We have our two sides that are given to us. Point A, B, and C. Looking for point D. Well, I could look at it as opposite sides being parallel, or opposite sides being parallel. Either way will get you the same answer. So I'm going to go down 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So slope AB equals up 1 over 5. So now from C to D we're going to do the same thing. It would be -1, -5. So -1, -5 is the same thing as 1/5. So AB is parallel to DC. We also have AD, rise over run, and BC, rise over run. Those are the same. So AD is parallel to BC. So we know from here we have two pair of parallel sides. So point D is at negative 1, 2. So if that's our parallelogram, we look at the slopes and we see that they are not opposite reciprocals. So it's not a rectangle because the slopes are not opposite reciprocals. We should check out the consecutive sides. Because it's a parallelogram, we know the opposite sides are congruent, but we need to look at consecutive sides. So we're going to look at side AB. So we'll say 3 minus negative 2. Negative 2 minus the negative 3. So that gives us 5 squared and 1 squared. 25 plus 1 is 26, square root of 26. That by itself doesn't mean anything. We have to compare it to another side. So I'm going to look at AD. So negative 1 minus negative 2, and 2 minus negative 3. Negative 1 plus 2, 2 plus 3. 1 squared and 5 squared leaves you the square root of 26. This would be square root of 26, by the way. So now we have the same. That's going to give us 4 sides that are congruent, because a parallelogram has opposite sides congruent. So if we show consecutive sides are congruent, we now know that all the sides are congruent. If we have 4 congruent sides, we get a rhombus. So I'm going to take the box away from this parallelogram statement. It is a parallelogram, so I won't erase the word necessarily. But your final answer, the best, most specific answer, is a rhombus. For the next portion, we're going to plot all these different locations on our graph. We're going to label them with these names. Then we're going to come through and find a parallelogram, a rectangle, a square, a trapezoid, and a rhombus. So here, considering this to be 0, 0, I found all the points, labeled what each one of those were. We're supposed to work with this music company, the school, the phone company, and another location to help you identify a parallelogram. Well, the zoo would give you the fourth point to make a parallelogram. So zoo was the missing one. We'd have two pairs of parallel sides. You could give the numbers for those slopes if you wish. Rectangle. Bank, museum, electric company. The bank, museum, electric company, and what other point would make that a rectangle? Well, the bowling alley would then make it a rectangle. That we're going to have two slopes at 0 and two slopes undefined. Those are considered opposite reciprocals. And if we have opposite reciprocal slopes, then we know we have a rectangle. We're making a square. We need to find 4 points that make a square. Well, a real obvious one might be music, library, bank, and bowling. And we have undefined slope, 0 slope, so that makes right angles. And then we have 2 units horizontally, 2 units vertically. So those are easy to count to know your distance. 4 congruent sides. So that's what makes it a square. 4 right angles and 4 congruent sides. We need a trapezoid. I think there's going to be a couple different possible trapezoids here. One that's catching my attention here: the phone, the school, the music, and a museum and the music. There would be a parallelogram. Phone, school, museum, and music. two sides are undefined slope. So that makes them parallel. And then we had a 0 slope and a -1 slope. So that should be enough to show you that you have a trapezoid. Last one, we're looking for a rhombus. Well, the square was a rhombus. That would be an obvious way to make a rhombus. 2, 2, 2, and 2. We also, more creative, we look like we have a rhombus at the post office, music, electric company, and bowling. Post office, music, electric company, and bowling. So those would be your 4 points. Now the way that we know that they are all the same length, we can see that the slopes are up 1 over 2, down 1 over 2. That's one way, but in terms of actual calculations, we'll take the post office, which is at 1, 2, and the music, which is at 3, 3, the electric company, 5, 2, and then the bowling alley, which is 3, 1. We can look at the distance of the post office and the music store, which would be 3 minus 1 and 3 minus 2. That gives us 2 squared and 1 squared, which gives us a square root of 5. Then we could look for the music store and the electric company. That would give us 5 minus 3 and 2 minus 3. Gives us 2 squared and -1 squared, which is the square root of 5. Electric company and bowling. We have 5 minus 3 and 2 minus 1. which is the square root of 5. And then we'll finish with the bowling alley and the post office. Which is 3 minus 1 and 1 minus 2. 2 squared and negative 1 squared. Square root of 5. That gave us 4 sides that were all the same length. That's a rhombus. First of all, we were making our parallelogram, and that was with the school, music store, phone company, and the zoo. The school, music, electric company, the rectangle, that was the bank, the museum, electric company, the square, looking for the trapezoid, the phone, the school, museum, and music. There are several different trapezoids. The last one was the rhombus. The post office, music store, electric company, and bowling. So that was the overlap of all of those questions.